just promoted Ed McNeil to president. He's actually special assistant to the president of AFSCME Michigan Council 25. And having lived in Detroit for over 2 decades, I tell you, when this news came out, it just really hurt me to my core, Ed.
We put together a contract that would have saved the city $180.2 million. And that was health care cuts, that was pension, that was vacation, that was overtime. We also looked at efficiencies that were not working right in the city of Detroit that we have been trying to talk to mayors previously to say, look, here's why things are not working right in the city. We also said to them that structural changes is that some of these departments you're doing duplicate things. And so we need to change that. We need to reduce some of the work because you're being redundant in places. And so we have put together all type of, not only in concessions, but we have put together operations and restructuring and efficiencies that would move the city of Detroit forward. In doing so, too, we looked at contractors. The city of Detroit was spending $260 million on outside vendoring, where they laid off people and then went outside. And we said, hey, number one, you're getting taken by those vendors because what's happening is they lowballing the bids, and then they come back and they increase the bid with another change order contract. And so we looked at that. One of the things that we said is that everybody ought to be on the same footing. And so when we talk about a wage concession, the union said we're willing to take a 10% wage concession. But if we're going to take that 10%, then appointees need to take a 10%, all the exempt folks need to take a 10%, and all the vendors need to take a 10% haircut, because we said everybody need to be on the same page. And so they agreed to do that. We saved over $60 million in health care savings alone by doing that. The numbers that I'm telling you was verified because the state of Michigan required that they had Ernest & Young at the table to do the cash flow.
Ernest & Young, the accounting firm, right.
That's the accounting firm. They had them at the table to assure that what we were saying we were going to be able to achieve.
Okay.
And they verified those numbers. And Ernest & Young verified. And then on our health care, they had Milliman, a company who looks at company who they currently even have right now. They had Milliman come in and look at the health care that we did to bless that and say, yeah, they're going to retrieve this amount of savings. The Milliman company looked at it. They said, yep, this is a good deal. They sent it back. The city then signed off. We signed the contract. City leaders signed it, along with the mayor, along with myself, and all of the 33 unions. Then we took it out for a ratification vote. All of the unions ratified the agreement. We then notified the city that the agreement was ratified. All they needed to do was send it to council, and we were off and running to salvage the city of Detroit.
Right,
and mind you, once this contract was put in place,
right,
Ernest & Young and us had agreed that on June 30th of 2013, the city of Detroit would have been $6 million in the black.
Wait, now hold on a second. Wait a minute, because now you walked us through it. So you're not saying June of 2012. You're saying just a month or so, a month and a half ago.
Correct.
You're saying that Detroit would have been in the black?
They would have been in the black. And one of the reporters asked me, he said, well, hey, where did you get that from? I said, well, let me tell you how it's verified. It's verified 2 ways. Ernest & Young verified it, but if you would go to the website and you pick up the State of the City address by Mayor Bean, he quotes that in his speech that by June 30th, 2013, the city of Detroit will be $6 million in the black. So it's no number that I'm making up. This is stuff that was put together, and it was verified by the accounting firm of Ernest & Young, who the state mandated be in negotiations with us. The state and its Republicans, at least, have another agenda. And that came to light later on when they did not put the contract in place. When they came in and they said to the city council, and this is Andy Dillon, Andy Dillon said to the city council, and he said to other folks in the media, he says, well, you know what? We're not going to recommend it. The city should not recommend this contract because we need work rule changes. And so everybody was puzzled. Where did he come up with this work rule changes, and what is he talking about? That never came to us to talk about that. And so we asked. He couldn't explain it. The labor relations who we negotiated with, couldn't explain specifically what they wanted in work rule.
Was that ever on the table while the negotiations were going on?
We had negotiate on this. On the table, we had some work rule changes on the table, but we dealt with those.
You dealt with them?
We dealt with them and signed, sealed, and delivered them. And so he comes up with something else and so we said, well, tell us what it is.
Right.
Tell us what it is.
Did they?
Mr. Dillon never told us what it is, but what he told the council is this. This is where the threat came in, and this is where things started changing. And then I started looking at this and said, what the heck is going on? What he did is he told the council, if you approve that contract, if you go ahead and put that contract in place, we're going to put emergency manager in.
Wow.
That's when he started threatening the city council. And then, as everyone knows, the city council never ratified the contract. And then the next thing that came along was then Andy Dillon, the state treasurer, came back and says, we need to put a consent agreement in place. And a consent agreement needs to be put in place so we can accomplish certain things. And this is in his Annex B of this consent agreement. And so then he twisted the arms of the city council people and the mayor and them and says, let's put this consent agreement in place. They then agreed to a consent agreement. This was the 6 council people who I now say are bought and paid for, agreed to that, with the exception of Joanne Watson, Brenda Jones, and Kwame Kenyatta. The other 6 said, hey, we're going to go along with this. And as I thought about it, I said, these folks receive money from the Chamber of Commerce in their election.
Okay.
And I said, now I understand there's another agenda going on.
Yeah.
And so then I started to try and say, okay, what are they really trying to do? And then, boom, a light bulb turns on. And it says that these folks are after the assets of the city of Detroit.
Privatization.
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 They're after the assets of the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
And so then we went to court, because we filed an unfair labor charge against the city for unfair bargaining at that point and not putting in a collective bargaining agreement. That's a charge. So we filed it. We went into court. We were in federal court before Judge Turnoff. And I was on the witness stand. Our attorney asked me whatever questions. I explained the process as I just explained it to you.
Right.
And then after the judge said cross-examination, the state and the city said no questions. So then the judge turned to me and he said, well, I got a question. And he said to the attorneys, he said, can someone explain to me, since Mr. McNeil could not explain what work rules changes you wanted.
Right.
He said, can somebody explain to me what are the work rule changes that you're looking for?
Right.
And so the 4 attorneys were sitting there at the table, 2 for the city, 2 for the state. They looked at each other. And then the judge finally said, so is somebody going to approach the bench? And then Margaret Betts, who's one of the assistant attorney generals, finally approached the podium, and she said, Your Honor, we have to get back to you on that particular issue.
Wow.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're more than welcome.